Good afternoon. I think
Good afternoon, sir.
so. For yesterday, we've treated conditional statement, if statement. We've seen how it works and some examples about it, if elif and if else. So today we'll be starting loops and iterations. Like loops are one of the most powerful concepts in programming. Honestly speaking, like they allow a person to execute code repeatedly. Like if you have you want to execute a certain line of code repeatedly, loops is the perfect one to be used. And there were two in numbers probably for now. The primary ones, the for loop and while loop. We'll be starting with the first one, which is for loop. We'll see how it works and what are the certain concept about it. So, starting with the first one, though sometimes, as I've said, whenever you want to print, let's say you want to execute certain code, lines of code more than once. So loop is the perfect use case. And also, let's say if I want to print numbers from 1 to 100 or 1 to 50 probably. So in doing that, if I'm using just normal print statement, I have to print 100 lines or 50 lines. But using for loop or using loop, I can make it assembly into like 2, 3 lines of code. It will be executing up to my 100 times, up to the 100 times I wanted. So with the for loop, we have the format for writing it normally is loop, for example. The format for writing for loop is for, then your variable, in, then iterable. We have colon if you remember about yesterday. Then we have our statement here. So that's the format for loop. Let me write it for loop. So for, this is a keyword, then variable, whatever name you feel like naming your variable is okay. Then the iterable, like, is the thing you want to be going through. Let's say I have let's say for example I have a name. Let's say I have name equals something like ADM, for example, and I want to print each letter, separate letters of this name. So the best thing for me, the best process of doing that for me, I can use for. So here my iterable should be, if I, it depends upon whatever you feel like. You can just name it anything. Let's say I say character in. So the iterable here is the name of the variable I'm going to iterate with. The name of the variable is not this Adam, is name. So for ch in name, for example, colon, then what do I want to do with each of the characters from this certain variable name? So if I want to print each character, I will just come and write my print statement, print my ch. Because what happens here is that when this for loop reads this name, the first thing it does is it takes the first value here, then assign it to ch. I say print ch, then it will repeat itself. Take the second value here, assign it to ch, print it. Take the third value here, a, assign it to ch, print it, then the last value, assign it to ch. It continuously assign whatever, like a certain value is here to this variable. If you could remember during one of the examples that we have treated, I said like just by passing, let's say if I say print, for example, let me just do this. If I say print print name, yeah. So what will happen is it will print the whole name for me. But if I want to like to print the whole of the like individual characters within that name, I want to print A separate, D separate, A separate, and M separate. So the perfect thing to do for me is like this: use this for loop. And based upon how I have explained, the variable should be DCH, then the for and in are constant, then iterable is what you want to be your for loop to be going through. So here I want to print this Adam separate, after the alphabet separate. So I should just say CH. Then let me try running it here. So let me just explain it again. What it does is that it take one element at a time. That's just it. One element at a time. If you see ADA, a separate line. If you can remember, we said that by default, the end line of each print statement is next line. It will go to next line and print whatever you want to print next. But if you want, you can make something like, let's say if I want my end to be something entirely, I can make it a bit into, let's say I want it to be hyphen. If I print it now, they will be separated by hyphen. But now we're not after that. Just a reminder. So that's just how it works. It takes one element at a time. So the first for CH in name, what it does is it goes through name. Once the first variable it encounters, like the first item it encounters is A, so it assigns it to CH, print it, then go back again. So it continues, this for loop continues repeating until there is nothing anymore in this name variable. So that's just how it works. It's just keep repeating until all of your variables were executed. So also, in order to use for loop, there is one thing we should just talk about a bit before going deep down into for loop, because we'll need it. Also, look at this example. You can even make it into certain list of you have a list of items or dictionary of items you want to iterate through, just like the example we have cited before. Let's say I have fruit here. Fruit equals let's say it's a list. We have banana, mango, orange, orange, and let's say we have what next? What next? Okay, lemon. So let's say we have this, and we want to print each and every one of these fruits separate, or not necessarily print it. You can even manipulate it. Like, okay, you want to use one of them or change it or something similar to that. So the perfect thing for you is, let's see. So if I want to iterate through and print all of these fruits separate, so what I will do is I will say for. If you can remember, we say variable, then iterable. So this variable is not necessarily constant. You just assign whatever you feel like assigning here. So for what? Just name it. Any name is okay. But if you can remember, we said that try to make it a bit explainable. But they are different. I can't just come here and say fruit to throw me something like. But here fruit with S, here fruit with without S. So they are entirely different. For fruit in, what do I want my for loop to search through? Then my variable fruit. So what do I want? Let's say I want to print all of the fruits that are inside this. So print, then I will say fruit. So the same thing here, all of this, once I run this line of code, see it here. The first one has been printed, second one has been printed, third one up to the last one, which is lemon. And if you look at this, someone might say, okay, why is it that in this, the first example, Adam, it printed the alphabet separate, and here it just printed the whole concept? Well, the difference here is that I pass Adam as a single entity, as a single variable. So it just iterates this Adam. But here I pass each one of these in the quotation itself as a single entity. The banana itself serves as a single entity, the mango itself serves as a single entity, orange serves as a single entity, lemon serves as a single entity. But if I want to print each and every alphabet in the banana, in the mango, in whatever, all of the oranges, I have to use something again. If you can remember, we've treated nested if statement yesterday. So we apply the same scenario here. For the also we can have nested. The reason I nested is that, okay, let me just do it here separate. For let's say I should be having nested for loop. So I have my this fruit. Let me copy it here. I have my fruit here. So um For the first one is printing fruit, but let's say I want to have a nested. I want to print each alphabet within that certain fruit. So for this one, the first thing, banana has been assigned to fruit, but don't want to print banana entirely. I want to print the alphabet in banana. Or let's make it a little bit fun. Print banana first, then end whatever is in this line with comma, end equals, let's say, here. Let's say end it with colon and space, for example. So once if it means print banana, then put a colon in front of the banana. Okay, let me run it. You see how the output is. See banana, mango, whatever, orange. But what I want after this is that I want, okay, it should be something. Let me try. So what I want after this is that once it prints a certain fruit, the next thing for you is print the alphabet of that fruit for me. So here I should be having a nested for the second follow. But look at the indentation. They are the same position as this print. So the indentation is still the same thing with this P because this follow is under this follow. So for what I want is, let's say for a single character in, now this is my variable fruit, not this main with S. The one without S, not the one with S, because the one without S is one holding the first variable here. So I should be citing it here for fruit. I can fruit should be fruit. I don't know, maybe. Okay, you understand it. So this is our second for loop. What do you want it to be? Okay, we want each character to be printed. Let's say secret. So in this essence, after each character, after a certain variable banana is being printed, then the next for loop will print all of the characters of that banana. Then the loop will start again. Go to mango, print mango, put this column, then print all of the characters of mango. So let's try run it. It will be a little bit longer. Okay, yeah. Still, this one should be. Okay, let me have something here. Just try to make something a bit readable. Okay, look at it now. We have banana, then the alphabet of banana, mango, the alphabet of mango, orange, alphabet. So that's how for loop works. It iterates a certain given, let's say, list. So if you want something entirely different from this one, you can make it. If you like, you can manipulate for any any pattern you feel like manipulating it. And to understand for loop more, I say there is something we should be discussing now, which is called range function. Okay. So for a range function, what it does is that, okay, let's say I want to print numbers from 1 to 100. So the most obvious way for me is like, okay, I should just say print 1, for example, or print 2, for example, 3, then print. That's the most obvious way for me, like the direct method. I should be printing 1, 2, 3 repeatedly. But with the help of polyf and this range function, I can do this like effectively without any consideration. So how does this range function works? Let's look at it. And the format for writing it is write range open bracket. Let's see what this. Okay, so look at how it is. It's not even complete yet. Where's the rest of it? Okay, yeah, range start, stop, or step. That's how it is. You start with a certain value, comma, you stop, then your step. So what it's indicating is, let me just write it here, start, comma. So if you look at this by doing this, you can even read how this it works entirely. So if you return an object that produces a sequence of integers from start, from inclusive, um, then yeah, support index, comma. So all of these are like stop exclusive. So what is just trying to tell us is that start, stop, then you have, if you look at it entirely closely, you will see that the last one step has been enclosed under, like within, what can I say, within a square bracket. So it's indicating that this stop is entirely optional. Though some of them, there are some of the start and stop sometimes are optional, but we'll explain it as we move on. So start is okay. Start from what point? Normally range works with numbers, integers, or float, whatever. So you are the starting point inclusive. Let's say I want to print from 1 to 100. So here my starting point should be 1. And I want to print, let's say 1 to 10. So my stopping point, if I want 10 to be among my printed values, I should be including 11. That means how range works is that it excludes your start by default. Let's say if I want to print 1 to 10, 10 inclusive. So at my stop, I should be putting 11. If I put 10, it will exclude the stop by default. And the step, okay, this should be step, not stop. The step is how many steps are you making? Let's say it's 1, 2, 3. So the step by default is 1. You shouldn't have to include it. That's the reason for this square bracket. If you didn't include the step, by default, the step is 1. Start from 1, go to 2, 3. Increment the values by 1. That's the meaning of step. And if if the step is 2, then increment the step by 2. That's how it is. So let's see a simple example. Let's complete this thing out. Let's say for num, let's say in range open bracket, let's say 1 comma 10, print, let's say num. So when I run this, what happens if you look at it clearly? I have 1, I have 2, 3, 4, 5, up to the last value, which is 9. As I have told you earlier, the stop is by default excluded. But if I want 10 to be part of my answer here, so what I should be doing is I should just be make it here 11. So once I run it, it will start counting from my start up to the stop minus 1, which is 11 minus 1, which is 10. So I'm having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But if I want to include the range here now, the step, let's say I want only like even numbers to be printed, I should just say 2. And if you could remember, 1 is not even, so I should be starting with 2 and skipping 2. So if I run this, I should be having 2, 4, 6, yep, something. Uh-oh. I should be having something like 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Yeah. Why network? Okay. So now, once this is run, our output should be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That means starting with 2 to 10 to 11 was a step up to. So that's how this step works. We have the start part, we have the stop part, and we have the, what do you call it? We have our step. But one interesting thing about this range is that you can omit one of them, like you can have just one. Let's say, based on this scenario, let's say I want to print just 1 to, let's say 0 to or 10. So I cannot, like, instead of writing these jargons here, I should just be writing this just only step stop, because the start default is 0 and I want this all to be part of my output. And what I want is, okay, I have to put this stop. Where this does this for loop stop iterative? And the step, let's say I just want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like increment, one increment. So I shouldn't be bothering myself by putting this. So I should be doing here is that, okay, I should come here and say for num in the range, For example, often bright, so then I should say 11 here. So based on this, I've excluded the one, the zero, then I just say print none. So if I run this, it will work the same thing, 0, 1, 2, 3, up to 10. So what I also mean is that I can omit the start once I know I want what I want to print it should start from the initial starting point of the range value, which is 0. And my step, I want the normal step, which is increment of 1. So what I need to put is just my stop here. Just range, comma 11, then everything is okay. So that's how range works, honestly speaking. I can put, but necessarily you have to put the stop. If you didn't put the start, so the stop must be there, and the step also is optional. But if you want your execution to start from a certain point and end at a certain point, you have to include the start and the stop. If you want a certain steps, let's say 2, 2, 3, 3, or whatever, then include the step here also. And then,
Can you share my screen? I can't see anything here.
okay, I'm gonna see.
Is it my network? I don't even know. I can see now.
Okay, so that's how range works. So it's either you, but make sure that you put the stop. The start and the step are optional. So, but the stop is compulsory. There must be stop. So, in using for loop, you encounter this range most often. Most often, if you want to reach a certain numbers, let's say 1 to 100, 1 to whatever your limit is. But mind you, is that your stop is normally exclusive. If you put 11 here, your print should stop at 10. If you want 100, let's say you have to put 101. So the stop you put here is exclusive by default. And if you put a start, the start is inclusive. That's the last value that is being truncated. Then that's one thing. Looking through range, just the same thing. Just finished going through it, and I think the same thing for the for loop also. The way you've used, if you could remember, we have if a expression, I think conditional expression yesterday, where you can use just the for if statement is as a single line. So the same thing can be applied also for a for loop. Same thing can be applied ternary operation or inside list comprehension. Or like yeah, this is an example of a list. You can pass it as a list within your for loop as a inside the list. So what happens is that if you look at this example here, we have certain number of prediction 0.1, 0.9. So this is just the probability of a certain prediction. And for the binary output, what happens is, okay, let's say if we want to print the binary value of each prediction, the higher the prediction, which is let's say from, yeah, the closer the precision is to 1, you just abbreviate it to make it 1. The closer it is to 0, just make it 0. That's the binary. That means if you predict something at 0.9, obviously you fail. If you predict something at 0.9, even like you have 90% of getting it, 0.4 you have 40%, which is not up to half, so that means you fail. And then 0.7 is 70%, you are above average. So if you want to make it a little bit binary, that means just 0.1 and 0.9 and 0.7 should be 1, and this one should be uh, zeros. So if you want to make it like, if you look at this, let's do it here. But let's say let me just copy the first prediction. Copy this here, paste it. So this is my declarations. And let's say I want to, let's say, let me binary predictions equals, then I open my list. So now I'm passing for loop inside the list. Normally, what do I want it to do is, let me write my uh, for loop here. Let's say for uh, val in predictions, That's my first statement. Then what I want him to do here is I want to print values here. So the next thing I should be doing is print something here expectedly. So what do I want to print? I'm converting these predictions to binary. Let me just let me comment it, converting so that the predictions to binary. So that's what I want to do. So to print what? What do I want it to be printed here? So I can make even let me use in this scenario I have to include the conditional statement since I'm having more than one conditions here. It's either should be 0 or 1 since binary has two values 0 or 1. So the best way for me to do that is to include a conditional statement and say if what my val is should be, let's make it like if it is greater than, what's the greater than or equals to 0.5. If it is greater than or equals to 0.5, that means if it is below above average, then print, for example, let's say print let's say 1, for example. Else should be having else part, else print what, and else print 0, right? And okay, let's leave it like this. This is normal, what should I call it? This is normal for loop. So if I run this, I should be having 0 1 0 1. That's the expected. If you look at the output here, 0 1 0 1. So normal for loop should be like this. But if I wanted to make it in a like let's say straight line, like the ternary operations, so I can make it into this. If you could remember, though I've explained the if statement, the first thing that comes within this scenario is, I'll comment this. The first thing that comes within this scenario is the condition that follows after this statement. We are not including just normal scenario, you have to include this, the for loop, then the if statement, the whatever. But if we are dealing with these ternary operations, what we do is that we start with the statement for that single condition. So the for loop should not be the first statement. What should be the first statement is if statement. And the if statement also, what happens is that it's a conditional statement also. So we cannot start with it. We should move deeper into what's the statement for this condition. The statement for this condition is what? Is 1. Then we start with 1, a space. Then what? Our condition. If val is greater than or equal to 0.5. So if it is this, then we write this. Then what will happen? What will follow next? We move into the else part. If print 1, if it is this, else what? Else should be included. If you could remember what we have done in if, then else 0. We'll finish with the statement. Yeah. All the statement for this should be printed first, should be like should come first before this. Then statement here. We have for val in predictions. Three. So for val in predictions, right? Predictions here. That's of it. So that's the whole of it. So if I want to, in this scenario, I have to print it. But in that scenario, you see the print is just 1 here. But there, now I have to print binary predictions. So once I run it, I should be having this one. I should be having the same values. Look at it here. 10101. So by this time, at this point, I'm printing them separate. But if you look at it, I've enclosed it inside the list, this square bracket. So my answer is also inside the list square bracket. That's just the difference between them. So this statement and this statement are all printing the same values. Only that this one is printed like is having integer values separate as an output, but in this case, I'm having them as a list inside the square bracket. So that's one of the ways to manipulate for loop. And any question about for loop before we move into?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. So then we can add something here, but let's also move on. Then we can look at it later on. We have something else. Normally, else statement in loops, but that I plan on doing it entirely after, or let me just tilt it here for the follow. So we have something else. Just like in if statement we have else, the same thing here we have else for the looping. Let's say, but the only difference is that the else plays entirely uh, different role here. If you can remember in if statement, we say that if the condition is not true, then the else statement will be printed. But that's not the case entirely in the conditional statement here, like in the structure here. So I said there is one thing else statement in the loops also, but it plays entirely something different from that of if our conditional statement. In if statement, it says the else part executed only if the if statement is false. But whenever if statement is true, the else part will not be printed, will not be executed. But in this statement we are having here, the loops, one thing is that the else part will only be executed if our loop executed successfully. Like if it finished execution successfully, then the else part will be printed. Else it will not be printed. Like let's say for example, let's go back to our let's say our number, print for printing some values for num in range. Let's say I'm printing a range of values from um let's say 1, or let's just make it 0 comma let's say 20 for example. Then let me print it first. Print num. So what happens is that if I press display, I'm having numbers. It will print numbers from, if it's 0 to 20, I should just include the 20. So I'm having 0, 1, 2, 3 up to 19 because I put 20 here. But let me just say 21, for example. So by putting 21, I said, if you remember, the stop is exclusive. If I want 20 as part of my output, so I should put 21 here. Yeah, what I mean is that start from the default position, which is 0, reach off to 20, and stop. So look at it. So what if I want at this point, let's say I want, if you can remember here, we printed, let's say here, we printed even numbers, 2, 4, 6. Okay, so what if I want to make it a little bit, let me say complicated than that one? So what I will do here is I will come into this part and say, there are some statements that I want to, okay, let's just go through it. Here. So my else part should be, let's say I want to print something like, for example, let's make it done iterating. For example, this is my else part. So once I print this, what will happen here is at the end, done iterating. So whenever my for loop executed completely, then the else part will be printed. But let's say if I'm having something like, I'll introduce it later, but let's just go through it. If, for example, let me just write something, don't worry about it, in just some few minutes we'll explain it. If a num equals, let's say, well, let me just say it's not equal to let me just say modulo, I'm thinking, sorry, modulo 2 equals 0. So this statement is checking if modulo division. That means if I divide a number by 2, if the answer is 0, so print what? Or let me just say, let me use break. I think there should be something like this. So use break. So what this break explains is that I will explain this later. Like if it is this, just break. Oh, okay, it will break this thing entirely at this point. Thinking of the best scenario. Yeah. Let's say if it is 9, for example. So if num is 9 equals to 9, then break. So what this break does is that it will entirely stop the execution once it reaches 9. That's the break statement. Just simple example, though it doesn't make meaning, but we'll see for example of it later on. So this break statement, what it does is once this condition is true, this statement will execute. So the break statement will break the follow. You see, my length is 21. I should be having numbers from 0 to 20. But because of this, I'm having encountering number 9 and this break statement, what it does is just break the for loop. Then if since this for loop were like the execution of it was stopped along the process. So if you see below this statement, my done iterating is not printed. So I'm just trying to explain the else statement. So because the for loop didn't finish executing successfully, that's the reason why the else statement is not printed. But whenever my for loop print executed successfully, then the what is it called it? Then the else part will be printed also successfully. So that's the else part for us. And let's just go through while loop a bit. So that's else statement. Then we'll come or move on to the while statement also. And for while loop, it executed while loop executed as long as the condition is true. If you look at for loop, what we do is you say for number as long as this iterable is like there is an iterable here, a list of something, a range of something, so the for loop will be executed. But for while loop, what it does is that a condition must be set first. So if that condition is true, your while loop will continue executing blah 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 non-stop. So that's one of the weakness for while loop. You have to be very cautious when using it. You have to put something that will stop the execution along the process. If not, your while loop will just become something like infinite loop. It will just keep executing. So it only executes whenever your statement is true. If your statement is not true, it will not even execute it. That's how it is. And the syntax for it is your condition, while condition, then you have let's say a statement, for example, yeah, whatever you name it, or statement. So that's how while loop is. While condition, then you have your statement here. So as long as this condition is true, the statement under while loop should just keep printing, 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 or executing. So unless if you introduce something like this break that we have just introduced here, we use break, continue, whatever they were, like 3 to 4, I think we'll discuss them. So that's how while loop works. Let's take a simple example and see. Let's say just like in our own scenario, I want to print something like print numbers from 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. So how it does it, they are almost the same thing. It's almost the same thing with follow. But here I have to declare like the variable I'm setting the condition based on first. So let's say I'm setting my num here to let's say 1. That means it's just like my starting point I follow. I should be having the start to stop. So I have to initiate my start before the while loop. Then so let's say num is 1. Then one thing I say, okay, while num is greater than, or let me just say less than or equals. Let's say I want to print 1 to 10, for example. Then print um, num. So one thing what I'm explaining before is that if you look at it, it's just the same thing, almost the same thing that follow. So if I print this, it will go into infinite. It will just keep printing this one. The reason is, let me just run it. Uh, you see, one will be printed. That of infinite. You just keep printed. So I have to stop it from executing. That's the major issue about while loops. You have to be very cautious when using it, honestly speaking. So if I want to prevent this infinite loop, I have to set a certain condition. Well, let me say a statement that governs what direction my while loop should take. If you look at the first thing I say, I declare num as um, 1. That means its starting point. And I say num should be less than or equals 10. So at this point, based on this, I know I'm printing numbers from 1 to 10. So I have to set a certain condition that will move this num from 1 to 10. In the sense that once this num or like reach something, a number or higher than 10, this statement will be false. And whenever this statement is false, my while loop will stop executing entirely. So one thing is I will say num. I'm trying to make num. Now I'm printing from 1 upward. So let's increment it. Num equals 1. So this statement is just like, if you could remember, we've done it. It's the same thing as saying num equals num plus 1. This single statement. So based on this, I'm just saying, okay, whenever you print, let's say start with 1. Num is 1. 1 is greater less than 10. 1 is less than 10. Okay, print 1. Then what this statement does is that, okay, increment num by 1. Add 1 to this one, it becomes 2. Then compare 2 less than 10, yeah, 2 is less than 10. Then, okay, print it. Add 1 to 2, 3. So it keeps going until this segment is false. That means it reaches 11. When it reaches 10 here, 10 is 10 less than 10. 10 is not less than 10, but it is equals to 10. This equality sign here. So it will print 10. Then increment 10 to 11. Is 11 less than 10? Is not less than. Is it equals to 10? Is not equals. So this statement is false entirely. Then my while loop will stop executing automatically. So when I run this, it will print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's while loop for you. Then the same thing, let me look at any other example here. Okay, there's no example. So that's some of the shit about while loop. So it's interesting, honestly speaking. So the same thing, the same else statement that we've seen in for loop, we can use it here also. So whenever the same statement, the same scenario, the same explanation, whenever our while loop executes entirely successfully, then the else statement will be printed. And if something happens along the process and while loop got disrupted along the process, uh, then our else statement will not be printed. So let's look at some examples again. Let's say while true. Okay, this statement should be something clearly. What are we doing now? Let's say we want to print. We can even print backward also. Let's say I want to print from 15 backward. So you want to see the example. 1i is greater than or equals, let's say, from 15 to 1. Make it print I. Then I should be having my increment. Here we should be decrementing. Negative sign equals to 1. So it's the same thing as saying I equals I minus 1. So here, when I run it, it should be printing 15, 14, 15 up to down. So you can make it any way possible. And you can even like have nested while loop also. but it's a bit something. Or let me say you can have for loop under one loop. Let's say I'm having this, then I want to insert a certain condition for um let's say okay this one should let's just leave it. Monday Gaba will delete them later. But for this one, that's how while loop works. And for the else part, let's say I based on this I'm incrementing, then I insert a break also. I insert a break if my previous statement, if I is equals let's say 11, this is a simple example, then break. But the break should end with a semicolon, then my else statement, else comma, let's say print finished. So okay, let me comment this now. See, so okay, that should be this point. So if I run this, you see my else statement finished. But if I uncomment these two statements here, the if statement and the break statement, this line, okay, it should be. So if I run this, you see that the else statement will not be printed. 15, 13, 14. So the break statement stop the execution once I reach a certain point of it. And let's look at them. This break statement that I have been introducing, I've been saying they were called um, loop control statement. There were four of them normally: the break statement, the continuous statement, the pass statement, the else statement. No, we have just deleted X statement here. So let's just look at these three: the break statement, the continuous statement, and the pass statement. So in brief, what the break statement does is that it breaks a certain execution, like exit the loop. Once it reaches a certain condition, okay, break statement, you just stop the execution entirely and go to the next line. Stop the entire loop, be it for loop or for while loop. The continuous statement skips a certain value and go to the next line. Skip it. Let's say okay, we'll explain this when we go to example. Then the pass statement is a null operation. The past tense doesn't do anything. It's just like a placeholder. Like, okay, you are defining a certain program and you define a certain function, let's say, and you are not sure of how that function works perfectly at that moment. And you don't want to leave it empty, so you will not forget. So you just, after you define the function, you just put pass. Just put this pass inside it and go on. So when the compiler is executing the code, once you see that pass, you just keep it and go. But without the pass, it will throw an error because you didn't find anything at that point. So it's just a null operation. When nothing happens, it's used as a placeholder in loop functions or classes. Like where like you need something, but let's say you are not sure of it or you forget how to do it, or like you don't have enough time at that moment. So you just put this pass there and go on. So it will just hold the place for you whenever you want to execute your code, then you come back and substitute the pass with whatever you want to put there. And the else statement, we have seen how it works. Okay, let's start with the break statement. Though we've seen two examples about it. Loop control structures. Structures. Let's start with the first one. We say break. So how does it work? Let's have some examples here. Let's say let's go back to our fruit example. Let's do this fruit. Fruit. I think it should be something like this because let's say I have something like banana, watermelon, melon, for example, should be something like this, and guava, and let's just make it like this. So let's say I have this, and I should be having, let's start with for loop here since I'm iterating over this statement for a fruit in my list of fruits. Okay, I'm iterating this fruit. Then let's say print, for example, uh, print the fruit for me. But if to say that, okay, among the fruit I want, okay, if you encountered a certain, let's say if you encountered what, let's make it a little guava. Yeah, let's make it a little bit guava. That means if fruit is equals to, if you can remember comparison, now we are comparing, not assigning. So if fruit is equals to, let's say, guava, let me call it this, okay, it should be in a string. So if fruit is guava, then let's say break. That means if you encountered a guava in the list of my fruit, so just break the execution. I want you to terminate it. I don't want anything from guava backward. So if I run this code, it will print apple, banana, watermelon, and guava. So anything after guava backward, just truncate it. It will print the guava itself. And maybe if I don't want the guava, what will happen is I will just remove this print statement here. Because what it does here is that it has to print before it checks. But if I don't want guava printed, what I should be doing is I should remove this print statement here, then put it back before, just immediately before my break statement. So if fruit, if it starts with the first one, the fruit compare, is it guava? No, print it, break. So if it is okay, it should be something like this. Wow, I mixed this stuff up. I'm mixing stuff. Let's just leave it like this. Yeah, it's checking. Sorry, something. Control X, take it back here. So that's how it should be doing. You check if it is guava, then break. Then you can even make it a little bit interesting, just like in how can I say it? Another use case for this in our this machine learning stuff that we've been doing. So in machine learning also, this break statement is very efficient. Let's say in training a model, you can use it in early statement. If you remember, there is I don't know if you come across this callbacks early stopping. So that's how it works. This early stopping use break statement also. Like if a certain conditions are the spice, then just break the execution, break the training of the machine learning. So that's one of the examples for this. Then we can even use it in while loop also based upon how we have experienced it. Then for the while one, then the next one is continue. Against time almost past 3. Continuous statement. So what it does is it just skip that value and move on to the next. So let's continue with our first statement. Simple example. Or let me bring in something. My for I in, let's say, range, let's say 15. So here I want to print I, for example, and I want to print, let's say, if that number encountered, if I modulo 2 equals to 0, for example. So let me just say do this. Control X. If I modulo 2 is 0, that means I'm checking for even numbers. Then else, continue. So what happens is that it checks if this I modulo 2 is 0, that means if it is even number, then print it. Else, continue, keep it and go to the next value. So when I run this thing, what I should be expecting, I should be expecting 2, I think 0, 2, 4, I think I show something like this, or error. Okay, yeah, error because invalid syntax. But I think let me do something here. 1, 15. So invalid. I think the modulo is like this. I equals should be something I modulo 2. That's modulo. Right. I didn't look at it. If I modulo 2 is 0, print. Look at it now. 2, 4, 6, 8. So these are my even numbers. Instead of going like printing it the way we've done it before, you put 2 here, you put the increment of 2. It will do the same thing. Let's say if I put 2 here, I want an increment of 2. Let's say 2 here. It will print the same thing for me. Yeah. But I have to remove this if statement. But let's say if I just want to make it a little bit interesting, so that this will do the trick for me. So it checks if I is even number. If it is even number, print it. For continue, just keep it. That means if it is odd number, skip it and print it. So this one is more flexible. So if I want even odd numbers, I should just change this 0 to 1. Now I should be having odd numbers 1, 3, 5, 7. So this one is more a little bit flexible than the previous. You just have to change a single value here. So that's how continue works. If it reaches a certain value, just keep it and move on to the next value. So we can apply the same thing here based on this fruit also. Let me copy it. Sorry for being lazy. Let's Control C. If you are into coding, you have to like make yourself comfortable with this copy and paste. So if let's make it a little bit interesting. So say print. That means if my fruit is not guava, print the fruit. But if it is guava, just break. Okay, this is break. That means continue. Continue. You'll see the effect of it. Now, when I run this statement, what will happen is that if it is not guava, it will check this apple. Is it guava? It's not guava, so print it. Is it banana guava? It's not guava, print it. Is watermelon guava? It's not, print it. Is guava guava? Yes, then go to the else statement. The else statement will just, okay, continue. Continue means, okay, just keep it and go. Then it will just go to the next line, print berry. So when I run this, you will notice that my output doesn't have guava again. So what continue is keep the current iteration you are in. Do not perform anything. Just move to the next one. While break statement terminate the whole execution from that point. Just terminate it. Terminate that execution and just go out of it. Go to when if there is another statement, go and execute it. But for continue is keep the current one and move on to the next iteration. The loop should continue. Uh, just to make sure, let me just do something here. My entire else to confirm whether the loop continues or not based on our explanation of this else statement. Let's say having done iterating, for example. So this else statement is for the follow. So just to confirm that, okay, let me add it to the previous one also. So just to confirm that this continuous execution or not. So you see that at the end, we'll be having our done iteration. That means our for loop completely executed, executed completely. So that means continue, just keep this one and go to the next one. But in the case of break, let me introduce it here. See the effect of it, the difference. So in case of, let me just make this a little bit like the previous one. If it is guava, print this else. So when I run this, you notice that the last statement don't iterate on what we printed here because the break statement stop the execution. And we say that when the for loop executes successfully, then the else will be printed. So that's the major difference between continuous statement and the break statement. The break statement stop the whole execution at once, while the continuous statement just keep the current one and go into the next one. And we can even have it in while loop also. This is just simple example using example for loop. Let's take while loop for example. Um, yeah, printing numbers. Let's try printing numbers using while loop. Bad time, let me look at this. For 4%, I'm having that. So let's see while we define our numbers, I equals 1, while I is less than or equals to 15. Then let's say I want to print the numbers, print I. So by printing this, okay, this should be, then I say I minus equals 1. So I'm incrementing I to 15. Up now. Okay. You see my big head go, so should be plus. Okay. So print this. So you see the effect of this while you that's one of the effect of it. It's just it goes into infinite execution. So this is just printing value. So okay, why let's if I want to, yeah, in this the same scenario, I want to print just even numbers. I can use my if statement. Let's say if I, where is I modulo, where is the modulo? Let's say I modulo 2 equals to 0, for example. I'm having this print I and else continue. So, but if you look closely, this incremental, I left it here. It should be the same indentation as this. Because if I put it inside of this, it will be something entirely. So I want it to be within this while loop. So if this statement or this statement is finished executing, then it will increment and go back. So here I should be having my even number still. Yep, 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 yep. Come on, come on. That's taking me so long.